You're listening to the Mile You're In podcast. Everything running related, from 100 meters to 100 miles. And now, here's your host, Phil Patterson Jr.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Mile You're In podcast. Before I get into the actual episode itself, I just want to give a thank you and a shout out to Stephen Cameron from the Social Run podcast. I'm going to put his podcast link information in the show notes so you guys can check him out. Last week, he interviewed me, just a little discussion about running and life, and it was a nice conversation. It was fun. I'm always honored and humbled to be a guest on anybody's site, show, whatever it may be. So it was really nice, a cool opportunity, and I wanted to show the love and promote him and his show as well, just so you guys could check that out. If you're really into podcasts and you want to listen to something after this, you know where to go. But yeah, so for those of you that have been following me, you know that last month I was supposed to run 2 100 milers. One was dropped down to a 50 just because of the local curfews with the coronavirus. So I really didn't have anything else planned for the rest of the year. I figured, tackling those 2 challenges was going to leave me mentally and physically not in the mood to really do anything. So I left my schedule open. With that said, of course, people are going to come into your life and motivate you and inspire you to do new things, take on new challenges, and that's what happened. So my friend Monique, she hit me up on Facebook Messenger, and at first I was concerned because the way she started the conversation was like something had happened to her. So I figured it had to be running related, most likely. She tells me that she signed up for another 100 miler, which the people I'm friends with and that I've now come to surround myself with, that's normal. It's like, okay, but she was stressing because it was she already had one planned for December, and she's like, is it too close? And then she told me that it's a virtual one, and she didn't know what to expect, how to handle that. Even though she did crew me for mine on my birthday, she hadn't gone through it herself. With that said, we're having the conversation. I'm giving her some suggestions and experience and knowledge from mine. One thing leads to another, and she starts encouraging me to sign up as well. And eventually it leads to just that, and I signed up as well. I wasn't too nervous because I've run one by myself like that, so I knew what to expect. This was going to be my 8th overall 100 miler, so in that aspect I knew I pretty much have everything down at this point. It's just tackling the hurdles and obstacles that come along the way that you don't expect, or you don't plan for at certain times. If I was going to do this, I wanted to do it differently than my birthday one, because I really didn't want to run around my neighborhood 25 times again. So I wanted to have like a longer loop, so I didn't have to do as many. So I planned to run to her house, since she was going to be doing it and have an aid station set up for herself. I figured I could bring some stuff there and kind of have 2 aid stations, one at 5 miles when I hit her house, and one back at my house. Every 5 miles I had something, and that way I didn't have to stop at gas stations and things like that, which isn't a problem for me, but it's one less thing to have to worry about standing in line or adding distance by going in and out of those places if they're far from the street and stuff like that. So anything you can do to make it easier and more comfortable for you, the better. One thing that inspired me was when I first started running these 100 milers. After about 2 or 3, I said, it'd be fun if I ran 10 of these, to say I ran 1,000 miles in 100-mile races alone. So that's kind of been my goal. When that day comes, who knows what happens. I'm probably, as Monique said during the race, I'll most likely just sign up for another one and keep going. But that's kind of like my goal. If I hit that, I'll be like, okay, cool, I did that. The first goal was doing 100. Then it was like, now I want to do 9 more and have an even 10. So sometimes my OCD makes me do things I really don't want to, but that's, reality. That's life. It made me think about 2 of my friends that are also tackling huge accomplishments this same weekend that I'm doing this. Michael Ortiz, I've run with him a couple races now, and the reason I can say that is this guy, as of right now, because I just recently checked Facebook, and he was, I think, in the 70s, close to the 80-mile range. He is about to run his 100th in 100 weeks. So despite all the restrictions and everything that's gone on, running on his roof, treadmills in his house, whatever it took to continue the streak of running 100 miles every weekend for 100 weekends in a row, he's doing it, and he's about to finish. So when I'm done with this podcast, I'm gonna hop back on Facebook and see his progress. He's got live tracking. Thinking about that, my wife just joked with me as I prepare and getting everything ready to do the podcast. She looked at me and she goes, you look good. She goes, how do you feel? And I'm like, I feel okay. She says, you look like you just went to the gym and you're a little sore. And I was like, that's pretty much how it feels at this point. And of course she's like, that must be nice. But I noticed that, and even Monique had mentioned it during the race that, and this morning when we were kind of recapping, just that the more you do these, the more your body becomes used to it. And it could be that last month I ran one of these and a 50 miler. So my body's right now in this state where it's really going through a lot and it's used to it. But also just, again, this is the 8th time I've done this. My body's, I would have to believe, used to the pain and the recovery. So, the fact that I'm standing here right now and not sitting down or laying down or whatever, I'm standing here recording this podcast actually barefoot, just feels better. It just goes to show that, the more you do this, the easier it gets. It's never easy. I always say that, but it does get easier and your body starts to adapt to the pain. That muscle memory, I think, kicks in and your body's able to recover a little faster and rebuild itself. My other friend that I want to mention real quick is David Castro. David's running 368 miles for mental health awareness, and what he's doing is running 15 hours a day. So he'll run for 15 hours, whatever he hits, he'll stop there, recover, and get back out there the next day until he hits 368 miles. And he lives in the Florida Keys, so he's running up and down the Keys basically. So a nice, beautiful view all the time for the most part. Definitely hot. We've got a lot of rain, so that should help him out. But somewhere he's familiar with, something that he loves, somewhere that he loves. And I think about what I did this weekend, and I'm looking at these 2 guys like, man, that's impressive. So, it's nice because people will compliment you and encourage you on what you're doing, but that there's always someone out there that's doing even better that inspires you. So, keep in mind that someone may be inspiring you, but you're also inspiring someone else, and that butterfly effect continues. So whatever you can use as motivation, use it, man, because you're accomplishing your goals and your dreams. Getting into the setup really that I had, one thing that I changed this time that I started doing from the 50 miler last month was, I'd heard a lot about this product called Trail Toes, but I was really happy with dry goods and the success I had with that. But not having that for my 50 miler and them giving out free Trail Toes to use, I used it and was really happy with the result at the end of the race. My feet felt and looked great. So I bought some and switched to that for this race. My goal really was to use that every loop, reapply it, put new dry socks on every time, new dry shoes on every time, put the PR lotion on every time instead of waiting. I was trying to be more proactive and put it on and stay ahead of the lactic acid buildup and the pain and the soreness, taking aspirin every 4 hours, again, just to stay. I do have minor arthritis in my knees, so anything I could do to keep the pain down and stay ahead of it instead of waiting until I felt it. Just like with hydration, instead of waiting until I was thirsty in the past to drink, now it was sipping little bits at a time, even drinking a little bit more, knowing there were going to be stretches where I might need more than I had on previous loops. So you definitely learn a lot from the previous races, and you start to get better. Again, there's so many different things to get thrown at you that you can't plan for, or that you might plan for that just happen at different times that you didn't expect it. So it's one of those things where you have your game plan, things are gonna go haywire at times. That's where your mentality, your mental strength really kicks in, and being able to be flexible and adapt to that. And that's one thing that I really relate, for me personally, running to life, is just the fact that running has made me more flexible, and I can apply that to life. So when things start to happen, I'm not stressing as much, because it's like, all right, you've been there, you've done that, this has happened, this is something new, whatever it may be. It's like, if I can be in the middle of running 100 miles and this happens and I don't quit, like I keep going, then all right, whatever. There's an accident here that's going to make me take longer to get home, or someone has 12 items in the 10 item checkout line. I don't know why that really bugs me. It's a pet peeve, but that's a whole nother story. Actually, we won't even talk about that because it's not running related. Anyways, so the first loop was pretty smooth. I started at 6 a.m. It was very humid, which was not expected, because the weather leading up to the race, with all the storms going on, still hurricane season, it had been very breezy, lots of overcast, lots of rain. So the whole week I'm thinking, man, this is great. Like, for me personally, I love running in the rain. So I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm not going to be as hot. I'm not going to drain as quickly, so I won't need as much. And then, as usual, Mother Nature just seems to hate me, because bam, day of the race, everything is back to typical Florida weather, with sun and minimal clouds and high humidity. I think at one point it was 100%. So I was mainly just hang in there, start shaking the legs out. I hadn't run for the whole week. My last run was Sunday before. I wanted to just rest all the mileage I'd put in before this race. Again, it was a mental and physical break that I wanted to take, so I would be renewed and refreshed and not, already stressed out. Because a lot of times, if I don't do that, I get into the race and, it's like, oh God, I got 90 more miles to go, and you're already negative at the very beginning. So I wanted to avoid that. So I was running at 2 miles. I actually saw Monique. So this is the thing. Even though we were both running it because it's a virtual race, we were running our own routes. So we never really technically ran together. We just were running the race at the same time. That way we could communicate if we needed encouragement, or if we did have to, if somebody was really down in a rut, we could text or call the other person and say, hey, I'm here. Run to me, let's get through this together. So I seen her, and I didn't realize it, but she didn't sleep the night before. She, for whatever reason, just couldn't sleep. So she started at 3:00. So at that point, she's now 15 miles ahead of me, which kind of sucked, because I wanted to be, going through it at the same time, knowing she was at 15 and I was at, 2 or 3. I was like, oh God, she's going to be done so much earlier than me. And then I'm going to be out here suffering while she's at home relaxing. And that's going to be a mental, it's going to be mentally like, damn, I could have been done too if I started earlier. So it's another one of those things where you just shake off. You're like, whatever, because roles could be reversed. So, it's not something I let affect me, but, I happen to be leaving her garage and saw her coming in to start another loop. So we had a quick talk, and she let me know what happened, and it was just encouragement. Hey, get back out there. We're doing great. Weather's gonna suck. It's not what we expected. Even though she kind of preferred a drier run, I wanted more of a wet run. So we went our separate ways, got back out there. Since I didn't mention this earlier, the loops were 10 miles long. Instead of my birthday run being 25 loops, 4 miles apiece, this one to her house was 5 miles and then back 5 miles. So I figured, okay, I only have to do 10-mile loops, and they're split up. I'll run on the different side of the street, so each loop will feel different. It won't feel like I'm just running it out and back. It'll be different views. The first loop was under, a little under 2 hours. The second loop I hit at 4 hours and 19 minutes. I was feeling consistent, feeling good. Decided to put on the music. So the first loop I didn't want music. I just wanted to, get out there and get myself in the zone and in a rhythm. And then after that, I knew I was going to play music the rest of the run, which is new for me, but it's something I did in the 50 miler. Again, I used that as a practice just to try things that I wouldn't have wanted to try on a 100 miler. That way, if it worked, I stick with it. If it didn't, I'd throw it out the window. And, the trail toes, the music, different things that I tried on the 50 miler, I took with me for this race because they worked and I felt confident in them. So, I was feeling good, started the third loop. I saw some rain, so I started getting my hopes up. It did rain. It felt great. I loved it. Monique hated it. Too bad. But what sucked, and this is what I was trying to tell her, because again, we happened to both be at her garage at the same time. I wanted to get back out there while the rain was there, and I let her know. I said, yes, the sun is about to come back out, but keep in mind that's just going to make it even more hot and humid as it starts to evaporate. So yeah, it was a short-lived energy boost, I would say, because I felt great. I loved it. I enjoyed it, but as soon as that sun came out, and it was like that heat blanket that surrounds you and just starts to suck the energy out of you, and you just got to push through it. Thankfully, I could see for the most part the direction the clouds were going, so I knew there were more clouds coming and there was going to be some more shade, but the breeze was pretty much non-existent, which in directions is nice because it doesn't turn into a headwind. But, when you're out there for that long, any breeze starts to feel good, because even if you have to walk against a brick wall type headwind, it's better than just a sufferfest tunnel of heat. Like, stick yourself in a microwave and I don't know. I'm just trying to give you guys like the visual of just how miserable it can be out there sometimes in that heat and humidity. So because of that, when I got home, I said, you know what, whether it's a cold shower or the pool, which felt very cold in my opinion. So I said, I'm going to get in the pool, cool down, bring my body temperature down, maybe give myself some new energy and revive myself. And it worked great. Like, I instantly felt good. I felt fresh. It almost felt like an ice bath in a way. So my feet felt a little renewed as well. At that point though, I noticed something that only us men can really relate to. Now we all relate to chafing. Any runner, and I would assume any athlete deals with some sort of chafing, no matter how prepared you are. I guess listener discretion advised. I'm not gonna go in depth here, but yeah, my goods were not dry. My goods were chafing. They were hurting very bad, and no matter what I applied, the stuff that always works, for some reason this weekend it didn't want to work. So thankfully I could reapply and it wasn't stinging, but just the friction still stung. And it was like getting in the pool felt great because, it stung for a little bit, but it almost like kind of numbed it for a little bit because it was so cold that as soon as I got out and I started drying off from the heat and there was more friction from me running, it was a painful distraction because it did take me away from some of the other things that, bring you down a little bit during these runs. But I think I would have traded, maybe a couple blisters, or I might have traded some dehydration. I don't know. Chafing in that area, oh my gosh, man. Any guy that knows what I'm talking about, and you feel my pain and I feel yours. So yeah, getting back to the race, pushing through. A lot of it is pretty much repetition at that point. When I was running north towards her house, I was on the east side of the road. And then when I would come back south to my house, I would run on the west side of the road. That way, just again, looking at different things, even though I would see each thing 10 times, I'm not seeing them 20 times. Or if I do see them, I'm seeing them from a different angle. Because there were certain things that I would see from one angle, and then on the way back I was like, oh, I wonder, and I would look and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Because if you're always going one direction, you always see things from the same perspective. And man, that sounds like something I could preach on. But on my way back on that fourth loop, there was construction going on a couple places actually during this race where I had to leave the sidewalk and get into the road because they were doing work on the sidewalk or on the poles, and they didn't want me, walking under them or near them. So instead of crossing the street, I would just safely hug the curb or the bike lane and run in the road. As I was finishing the fourth loop and the sun was just beating me, I knew I had a mile and a half to go, so I wasn't too concerned, but I had slowed down a little bit just because of the heat. The one construction guy, I see him go in the back of his truck and pull out an ice cold bottle of water and, kind of look to me like, hey, do I want this? And I was like, yes. I gave him a thumbs up, thanked him. I chugged that bad boy and it gave me life, and I started running again back to the house. So I was able to finish that loop a little faster than I was expecting the way I was feeling. So, I hit that at 9:49. So I started feeling confident, like I'm on pace to PR. But it's one of those things now where I threw out the window because it's like, it's going to get bad. So, cool, right now you're on pace to do it, but whatever. It's probably not going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, you don't beat yourself up about it. But, hey, the quicker we can get done, even better. This time, I hopped in the shower instead of the pool because I wanted to actually reassess my body, knowing what was going on down there. I wanted to just check everything out, see if there was something I could do, but also kind of rinse myself off because I didn't want to bring all the junk, just the nastiness that I had picked up on the grass and the dirt and all that. I didn't want to keep putting that in my pool, so I wanted to get in the shower and kind of clean up. Didn't actually bathe or anything. I literally just used the shower to rinse off and scrub myself down, but that way I would feel a little bit refreshed as well. Okay, bam, we're clean, we're good, let's get back out there. The fifth loop, started slowing down just from fatigue in itself, but I finished that in 13 hours, and I had been avoiding coming in the house for the most part because I didn't want my son to see me and then start getting upset or sad, but I missed him and I wanted to interact with my wife as well. So I said, I'm gonna go in. It's getting late. Probably by the time I finish the next loop, they'll be sleeping. So we're at the halfway point. Let's take a little longer of a break. Took another cold shower, hung out with my son for a few minutes, talked to my wife, let her know how things were going. There's a pizza place that I was passing. It was on the side of the road that I would run towards Monique's house. So I said, you know what? I'm really hungry. It's getting late. Let me get some food in me, something hot. Because up to that point, I was just eating cold fruit and kind of candy, snacks, things like that. I wanted something truly solid, something greasy, fill me up, give me energy. So I ordered, I called ahead because I knew by the time I ran there, it would be ready. I ordered some chicken tenders basically and some barbecue sauce and got a soda, picked it up, wolfed it down, didn't realize I was that hungry. Walked it off a little bit, let my body digest the food and soda as much as possible. And then when I felt like I was good, started running again. It was starting to, get dark. So I was contemplating if I was going to need my night gear that I typically need. But I realized the path was pretty much well lit from the street lights, that I wasn't going to need a headlamp. And because I was sticking to the sidewalks and adhering to like the crosswalk signals, I didn't feel like I was going to get hit. So I didn't want to draw more attention to me with my LED vest. So I decided to just stick with what I was wearing. I hit mile 60 at 16 hours. So I finished that loop, started really feeling sleepy. So I took another cold shower real quick and took some stay awake pills. It just wasn't working. My body, I got a decent amount of sleep. I got my normal amount of sleep. Naturally my body is used to going to bed at that time. And I think that's what was kicking in. My body was saying, what's going on? Normally we're sleeping or getting ready to sleep at this time. I'm tired, let's go home and sleep. So, I did what I could. Running definitely helped because it keeps you awake and keeps you alert. But I was now starting to feel that fatigue from last month, from those 2 races and everything that's going on. It was starting to finally kick in, and I was having to walk a little bit longer than I was and running less. I was happy about that because my goal was to get to 60 or 70 before I got to that point. So knowing I was in the 60s now, was like, okay, these next 40 are going to be a lot slower than the first 60, but that's better than, being the flip side, having your first 40 be fast and your last 60 be slow. So, it was more just try to stay awake as long as you can, fight the sleep as long as you can. And when you can't anymore, then we'll just take a nap. So, 5 miles into that loop, I hit Monique's house, and she had everything set up for both of us, and she actually set up a little mat and like some like a blanket or a pillow. I forget what it was, but she set up some stuff in case I did need to lay down or take a nap or anything. So I set my alarm for an hour and said I'm gonna give myself an hour of sleep and see what I can get out of that. As I was sleeping, my watch woke me up because I heard it beep. Sometimes it does that if you're in an area where it loses signal. So I thought, okay, maybe it, was trying to reacquire the GPS signal. I looked down and I noticed it said 66 miles. And I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't do a mile. I've been laying. So I thought the way these watches work is they usually have a button you can press if you want to do like an interval or something along those lines. So I thought, okay, you know what, maybe I accidentally bumped my watch and triggered it to think I just did a mile. So I was like, oh, whatever, I know the distance. The watch is going to be a little bit off for the rest of the race, but I'm not going to stress it. Fell back asleep, woke up when my alarm went off, felt okay. Basically ran when I could, walked when I had to, got back home, didn't want to wake up my son and my wife by taking a shower. So that time I got into the pool. At that point, I'm now at mile 70 at 20 hours and 20 minutes. Kind of funny because it was 2020. But mentally, I felt good because I was still moving. I was still able to run. I knew I had 30 miles to go. It's still dark. Things are going the way I'd hope, and I was feeling confident. I really wasn't hitting very many lows. Like there was a lot of riding the highs and very little of grinding the lows. So I just felt confident, like this race is going really well. At that point I knew I'm not going to PR, so that was nice because it was that little extra expectation and pressure taken off of me, even though I apply it to myself. But that's always good. Like it's one less thing you have to stress about or focus on. basically just did my normal routine again, the socks, the shoes, the lotion, the trail toes, and get back out there. So I get to Monique's house and I'm like, I need another nap. I can't. I don't think I can make it back to my house before taking a nap. So knowing I had a setup there and not have to come back home where I would then have to shower because there would be nowhere for me to lay comfortably being dirty. So being there with a mat that could be cleaned and her stuff that had plastic on it so I wouldn't make it dirty, if I didn't have to, that helped because I could sleep there and not have to force myself for another 5 miles to suffer. I took another hour nap and that's when my watch went off again. And I was like, did I just hit the button again? I had actually taken the watch off and laid it down just so I wouldn't do that. And as I look at it, I noticed it was ticking as if I was still moving. So what it was doing is every 3 to 5 seconds, it was going 0.1. It was basically going at the pace that I was running at that point. I don't know how it was doing that, but the time was pretty spot on. Like it was making it look like I was doing 40-minute miles while I was sleeping. So it didn't stress me out because I knew the route, I knew the distance. I wasn't worried about that, but it did throw off looking at my watch and trying to stick to a certain amount of calories taken in versus burned and things like that. It did throw that off a little bit. And then just in general, like you see certain points that are your true mile markers, but then the watch goes off and it's like it throws you off because now my watch is telling me I'm 2.25 almost 2.5 ahead of what I really am. So it's like you see that number on your watch go off and you're like, man, I wish I was there, but you're still a little bit behind that. It's like, this sucks. Like you wish you could edit it on your watch in real time. So it's one of those things you have to remind yourself of, is that you're really here. You're not where the watch tells you you're at. That way you don't get your hopes up and have false expectations of finishing. So I get home, finish that loop, and it's 24 hours and 26 minutes at that point. So now I'm doing the math in my head. I have 20 miles to go, a little under 12 hours to finish. I'm like, this is not cake. It's not easy, but it's definitely doable, even if I have to slow down drastically. So that gave me confidence knowing even if I had to take a longer nap, take a third nap and take more time, I knew it wasn't anything that was going to hinder me per se, because I had plenty of time in the bank at this point. So do my normal routine. Now, the one thing I did change for this loop and for the rest of the race was I now put on a new pair of shorts and I put on my long sleeve shirt. I did that because it was something I experimented with for my birthday run. I put on the shirt and I changed my shorts because I could no longer deal with the chafing. It was just so painful. And I couldn't find, like sometimes one thing hurts more than the other. Like running might cause pain that the walking doesn't, or walking causes the pain and then it makes you run more because you don't want to walk and feel that pain. It didn't matter. When I was walking or running, the chafing hurt. So the only time it felt good was when I wasn't moving, and I didn't want to do that until I hit 100. So I did something I don't think I've ever done before. I put these shorts on that don't have the underwear or boxer liner in them. They're just, regular loose fitting running gym, shorts. So I knew my junk was just going to be like all over the place, which to me was going to be okay because it wouldn't be rubbing any material. It would just be, skin on skin. This is so awkward. Because I'm like picturing this in my head, what was going on down there. But yeah, I didn't know how it was going to feel, because I've never run free like that. So I didn't know if the bouncing and movement was going to cause pain. So it was something I was willing to risk to avoid any more chafing and burning. Thankfully it worked out and things didn't get worse, but and I could say as of right now things are healing very quickly. Boy, this might be the portion of the podcast that I use, the little clip for people to to draw people to listen to this episode. Oh God. Woo. At least we could laugh about it, right? So God, I didn't think it was gonna be that funny. Meanwhile, there's probably somebody who's listening with a kid that's if you're listening with children and you had to stop this, I'm sorry. I'll stop now and get back to the race so you can continue listening. Thank you for bearing with me on that one. But yeah, I changed the shorts, I changed my shirt, and because I was still sleeping, or I wish I could run and sleep, because I was still sleepy, instead of making noise in the house and trying to make my own coffee, right next to the pizza place that I got the food from for dinner, there's a Dunkin' Donuts, or now they call themselves Dunkin', I just realized. I decided I was going to stop in there, get some hot coffee, get a little breakfast sandwich, and then, get a soda. And that coffee definitely helped wake me up, give me some energy. The food, I should have gotten 2 of those things because I devoured it. Like, I didn't realize I was that hungry. I got out there, that gave me energy. Again, it was more walking than running at that point, but the walking pace was still around a 17-ish mile pace. So, at that point I was telling myself, keep it as close to 3.5-4 miles an hour as possible. That way each mile you're ticking off more and not dragging on the race and the finished expected time. I get to, and actually one thing I even want to mention before that helped was I was posting 10-mile updates along the way on my Facebook group, letting people know what was going on, how I was doing. I wasn't checking. I never check those. I wait until after the race to read those just because there's so many that go off. My messenger went off and I knew it could have been Monique because that's how, we communicate sometimes is through Facebook Messenger. So the only reason I checked it was thinking Monique was, letting me know something was going on, because on her end, with the lack of sleep she had the night before, she actually stopped to try to get some sleep during the race. And for the second time, she was now throwing up, and that's not normal for her. So she was struggling, and I thought, okay, this is where she's reaching out for me to meet her somewhere and help her get through, a tough time of the race. But it was my friend Aisha, who, God bless her, she's run so many of these virtual races lately. After doing my second virtual 100, I now have even more respect for her and her mental ability and her personality to just keep it fun and keep it exciting and push through these lonely, truly lonely miles. She sent me a message encouraging me, and it lifted my spirits a little bit more. It's just the little things that you sometimes take for granted that push you a little bit more. It was nice. I'll leave it at that. It was a simple, short message that was another piece of motivation I could add to my list and get back out there and go. I get to Monique's house. I refuel, do what I need to do. I told myself I've been in this position before and pushed myself. So at the end of Wildcat last year and at the 80-85 mark at my birthday run, I noticed that I actually could run more and faster than I was allowing myself to think I could. Again, it's a mental struggle. You feel the pain and you think you can't do it, but if you push past that, you realize you can. So in the hopes of knocking down as much time as possible, I said, I'm going to run a little bit here and see how I feel. And instead of just doing the shuffle, I'm going to actually run, like open my stride. Let's see what happens here. And I felt good. The pain, it was very stiff and sore the first few steps, but once the hips got open and everything was being stretched out again and not so compacted, I was like, man, this feels good. And the time per mile was going down, and I was getting motivated again. Like, oh man, like I have more energy than I really realized. Now that I wasn't falling asleep, and now that I got a lot of food in me, and the sun was out, it was bright, it wasn't so quiet and dark and lonely. There was life again on the streets and activity going on. It just renewed me, and those 5 miles were faster than any 5 mile period I had for a while, after I would say around the 40-50 mile mark. So I felt good about that, but as soon as I got home and finished mile 90, which I hit at 27 hours and 43 minutes, my body was like, yeah, you're paying for that now. Because, now stopping and doing what I needed to do before heading out on a loop, my body was like, yeah, this is why you stick to a little bit slower of a pace. Even though it might be a little bit more painful as it's happening, you're not draining yourself as quickly. So getting ready to start the last 10 miles, mentally I was like, yes, we're almost done. This is the last loop, the last time I got to look at any of this stuff. I'm going to finish way ahead of the time that I'm allowed, and a little bit faster than the goal that I set for myself. So I had that going on, but then there was the physical and mental battle of you just beat yourself up for 5 miles to get here, and you still got 10 more to go. So it was a little bit of a balancing act of happy, sad, happy, sad. I get out there. At that point, I noticed just 2 blisters. They were very minor. They were both on my left foot, one on my middle toe, and one on the inside of my big toe. So I quickly popped both of those. That way they wouldn't, have the ability to continue to grow. Put my socks on, refueled, and went out there. I was ready. I was done. So as I'm entering Monique's neighborhood, about a mile away from her house, I see her coming towards my direction, and she decided to just walk it in with me. At that point, I was again back to more walking than running. So I'm walking with her. We're talking about her race. We get to her place, realize I'm at 95, she's at 98. So, we took our official race selfie. I encouraged her to not sit in the garage too long, get those 2 miles over with and enjoy it. I didn't want to sit there too long. The slight mistake I made because of that, with everything that was going on, I didn't top off my water bottle. So I did end up paying for that towards the end, because I didn't have what I would consider 5 miles worth of hydration. The last 2 miles or so of that loop were pretty miserable hydration wise. I had thought of stopping at the Publix, that's about 2 miles from my house, but knowing it was going to add about a quarter mile to get there and back, and then who knows how long I would be standing in line, I said it's not worth it. By the time I get there, get something to drink, and get back to where I am right here at this moment, I could be probably a quarter mile away from finishing. So it wasn't worth it. I'd rather suffer for these last 2 miles as slow as they have to be than adding a little bit of time just for something to drink. I pushed through, and bam, there it was, 100 miles at 30 hours and 53 minutes. Typical 100-mile finish. I get home thinking I'm going to walk in the door, some sort of excitement, some sort of celebration, some sort of emotion. No. I come home, my wife and son are gone. I was like, well, we've been here before. You finish these races and there's really nothing dramatic, exciting. You did it. You accomplished your goal. There's no one here to celebrate with other than yourself. Enjoy it, relax, time to recover. So I jumped in the pool, cooled down, then I got in the shower and took a real shower so I can clean up. And I took a little nap until my wife and son came home and hung out with them. It's one of those things I didn't plan for. It happened pretty much last minute. Knowing what I've accomplished in the past and knowing what I'm capable of gave me the confidence to sign up and attempt this. Being my 8th 100-mile finish, they get easier, but they're definitely not easy. So it's still fun, and my wife and I joked about this the night before the race. The fact that I could even call it fun is still surprising to her. But I told her, you know, I've learned along the way different things to keep it fun, enjoy it a little bit more. As miserable as it can be during the run itself, finishing and knowing what you just accomplished and did is always inspiring to do it again and see if you can do better, or just to experience something different. Because even though it is, at the end of the day, you're running 100 miles, it's different routes or different challenges, again, different obstacles. What really frustrated me was as soon as I finished the race, that rain that we had experienced the whole week up until the start of the race came back. It's been raining and breezy and cloudy since. So Mother Nature and I are definitely going to have a conversation and come to some sort of compromise where she can start working with me here during these races. Because come on, man, really? Like, same thing happened during my birthday run. But until the next episode, again, as always, thank you guys so much for all of your support. Stay safe. Enjoy your life as much as you can despite restrictions, and let's make the best of this.
Thanks for listening to the Mile You're In podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check out previous episodes and more at heelstriker954.com.